Good evening and welcome back to 31 Horror Nights. It's October 28th and tonight's movie is Suspiria. This is another movie that I could have put in the classics Horror Nights. Suspiria is a 1977 Italian horror movie that since its release has gotten a lot of notoriety and respect. It's now seen as a very influential film in the genre. Apparently, the plot is a young woman going to ballet school and suspicious things are happening. I was expecting it to be in Italian with English subtitles, but apparently a lot of it was recorded without audio and it was dubbed in a bunch of different languages. In fact, there were several different languages being spoken on set. Italian, English, German. All the actors were just speaking in their native language and it was dubbed into a specific language later. From the trailer, this movie looks very stylized. There's a lot of color in it. Horror movies tend to favor a lot of grays and browns, so that's something that sets it apart. Also, apparently, the score features a lot of a prog rock band called Goblin. This movie has certainly piqued my interest, but just as always, it's going to take a view to really know how well it holds up. I'm going to go check it out. Okay, I get why this movie is a cult classic. I'm not saying I'm in love with it, but I am saying that I get it. I'm giving Suspiria a 7 out of 10. This movie is not without its charms and does have its moments. The number one thing to appreciate in this movie is just how pretty it looks. The sets in this movie are beautiful. It's all so bright and colorful and extra. And that doesn't even stop when the lights go out. In the scenes that are supposed to be dark, there's actually like a colored light illuminating everything. Sometimes it's red, green, blue. I mean, it makes no sense, but it does contribute to the aesthetic, and aesthetic is clearly very important to this movie. On the flip side, while it does excel in the visual department, it lacks in the audio department. I did not care for the scoring of this movie. It's not because I thought that the music was bad, I just thought it was overbearing and obnoxious a lot of the time. Pretty much every scene where something scary or spooky is gonna happen, the music it just sounds like someone's bashing on the drums over and over. However, it does do the thing where, like, the scary music will, like, abruptly stop. Sometimes when a scene ends, and sometimes in the middle of a scene. The acting in this movie is also very good, the standout being the lead, Susie, played by Jessica Harper. Who, by the way, looks a lot like Emma Watson. I'm sure I'm not the first person to make that observation. I had mixed feelings about the horror in this movie. Some of it was amazing. There are a few dead bodies in this movie that are just gnarly. But there are a couple points in this movie where the intensity sort of falls down the slippery slope and becomes campiness. But this isn't the type of movie where that, like, kills the mood or anything like that. The story and the horror elements aren't amazing, but this movie is able to bank on its aesthetic for pretty much the whole thing. I wouldn't be surprised if other horror movies that use a lot of bright colors, like Crimson Peak or Midsummer, took cues from this movie. I can see why a lot of people love it, and I do think that it holds up. Now I want to talk about a few spoilers. The first impression that Susie gets of this school is not the best because it's late at night, it's raining, and when she walks up to the front door, this other student just runs out of it screaming, and she doesn't look back. And pretty much a little bit later in this movie, like the next scene, is that woman in hiding, and she gets killed. And the witness gets killed, too. Those are one of the really gnarly dead bodies I was talking about. It was like stained glass cutting a head in half. Throughout the movie, more and more characters that are going against the status quo die in very spectacular ways. There was this blind guy who played the piano, but got fired, and then his dog suddenly just turned all Cujo and mauled him to death. And Susie's roommate, Sarah, falls into a room full of razor wire and gets her throat slit. There's a lot of suspicious things happening at this school, but one of the most suspicious parts of it is the teachers say that they go home at the end of the day. They don't stay in the dorms with the students, but they hear the people walking around the hallways at night, and they're not walking in the direction of the front door. They're walking the other way. At the end of the movie, Susie follows where the footsteps sound like it leads them, and is led to the one of the main offices. It wasn't the headmaster's office, it was like one of the top directors. And there's this mural on the rear wall that has a secret door in it. And when she goes in, she sees that that's where the teachers go during the day. And she overhears conspiracy to kill her because she's knowing too much and asking too many questions. She escapes into another room and she finds the headmaster, who is actually a witch who is supposed to be dead but is still around. Apparently the entire school is like a front for a coven. Susie fights back and is actually able to kill the witch. And they say earlier in the movie that a coven is a lot like a snake. It has a head, and when the head is gone, the entire thing just dies. And they meant that quite literally, apparently, because all the teachers start, like, bleeding out, and the entire building crumbles to the ground and sets on fire by itself. So yeah, this is actually one of those horror movies where the good guys win. While I didn't exactly love Suspiria, I can understand how this became a cult classic. It's a very distinctive, interesting movie. I'm glad that I watched it. Thank you for listening. I'll see you tomorrow.